Hello gamers, welcome to Stix TV. If you haven't already, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Today we are going to be talking about EVO 2020 and the whole scandal around that. Once again, this is going to be a heavier video, so if you don't want to hear about the darker gaming news, please feel free to check out some of the other videos on the channel. Now, last week the fighting game community was turned upside down after it was revealed that several prominent members of the Super Smash Bros. Community were involved in sexual misconduct involving minors. Well-known players such as Senpai were confronted by previous victims of their abuse, which led to a domino effect, causing the larger Smash community to come forward and acknowledge how dangerous and toxic the tournament scene can actually be. Sidebar: Super Smash Bros. Is a family game that's nostalgic for adults but primarily directed at kids. For this reason, Nintendo does not sponsor Super Smash Bros. Tournaments. As a result of this, the Smash Bros. Community and the tournament scene is largely grassroots and not officially sanctioned. Now, Nintendo may have recognized this as well, because in my not so professional opinion, if you take any IP with huge overlap of adult and minor fans, you're always going to have groups of people whose emotional maturity level doesn't match their age. There's always a guy out there who can't relate to women his age. But if that guy is really into Star Wars and he meets a girl who's also really into Star Wars, he's going to mistake her knowledge about Jango Fett for maturity, even if she's only 16. So some would call that guy a loser. Most would say he's a pedophile. I'd agree with them. But in his mind, he's just connected with somebody over his passion and nobody else understands him. We've seen this happen previously in the Pokemon community last year, when several of their feature members were also exposed for misconduct in pretty much the same way as these predators, and they even had a female gamer being implicated in that story as well. Honestly, when I read about this kind of stuff, I don't think that it's a coincidence that Nintendo's online features don't include voice chat, because they see all of the age overlap in their games and probably don't want any part of facilitating this kind of behavior. While the Super Smash Bros. Controversy raged, several other popular gamers came forward with their own stories of misconduct and harassment within their own respective communities. Ubisoft employees came forward with accusations against the company that their CEO would be forced to address. Streamers who I used to follow, like Say No to Rage, were called out for cornering women at events, which he apologized for and then later deleted. And in the wake of these revelations, a Street Fighter player by the name of Crackprawn felt compelled to tell his own story, where he implicated one of the founders of the EVO tournaments, Mr. Wizard, aka Joey Queller, for sexual misconduct, including paying him to see his genitals while he was underage. There are more details to the story in the link in the description, but basically there was a group of boys at a local arcade that Joey Queller used to bribe with tokens to engage in actions that were sexually gratifying to him. Sidebar again: as a grown man hanging out at an arcade asking a young man to call him Mr. Wizard, he's pretty clearly a pedophile. But I digress. Mr. Queller went on to acknowledge the accusations, stating that he was young and he since worked on growing as a person. But who are we kidding? If there was a book of things that you say when you're only sorry you got caught, those would be the first two lines. And so the damage was done. Sponsors and dev teams who usually host areas of the events, like NetherRealm and Capcom, pulled out of EVO 2020, as well as several of the hosts and announcers for the tournaments. And by the end of the day on July 3rd, Joey Queller was ousted from the company and replaced by co-founder Tony Cannon, now of Riot Games, who I will note has their own set of legal woes regarding misconduct, and EVO 2020 was officially dead. Now I know what you're thinking. WTF? They were doing this in the Smash community? How could the world's largest fighting game tournament be cancelled with only 20 days notice and the CEOs of Creep? Why haven't I heard any of this? It's a great question. And honestly, that's why I made this video, because as I heard this news and started to do my research, I quickly found out that it was largely going unreported. None of the larger gaming outlets have really taken any time to do anything but report the facts as they've been revealed on Twitter, but no outlets have spoken with the victims or reached out to hear from more potential victims or really done anything to support the people negatively affected by these predators at all. A full week has passed with no word of an EVO 2020 cancellation at all from major outlets like Inside Gaming, IGN, or GameSpot. Even Forbes has a gaming section now with great staff like former Kotaku editor Jason Schreier, who is often eager to expose what's going on behind the scenes in gaming and has not put out anything regarding the situation, despite the fact that the massive loss of revenue created by this disaster should be of particular interest to them. When I googled EVO 2020, even now the event still comes up as scheduled to begin on July 31st, and there is no actual mention of the scandal or the cancellation until after all of the sponsored content at the bottom of the search query. It's not as though outlets like Polygon and The Verge didn't cover the story, but for the most part, it would seem that it has been buried. I did a little digging to see if maybe there was someone involved who had the power to silence this story, and while I can't connect the two directly, I will say this. Joey Queller and acting EVO CEO Tony Cannon are both from Silicon Valley, which, as you know, is a boys club that is pretty much run by dark money and venture capitalism. If you understand venture capitalism, then you kind of know that it has its tentacles in everything. This is literally where people like Jeffrey Epstein come from. In regards to tech, or the tech side, Queller and Cannon may just be entrenched enough to have some leverage within the bigger media outlets. As far as venture capitalists, the parent company for Riot Games is one of the biggest there is. That's the Chinese Tencent Gaming. And with Tony Cannon involved in all of this, I wouldn't put it past anyone to want to protect that relationship by deading the story. Not to implicate Tony Cannon in anything, or maybe to implicate him, but he is a co-founder of EVO with Joey Queller, and despite perhaps denying any previous knowledge of his actions, there is no way that Tony could have sat on a board with him for all of these years without having any idea what he was into. So I find that deniability to be implausible. On top of that, Tony is also from Riot Games, which has a history of promoting predatory behavior in regards to women, so I don't see much of a sea change coming to the community just because he has made his way to the top of it via the revolving CEO door. I did see some very thoughtful and heartfelt videos by guys like Leffen and Maximilian Dude, but outside of the fighting game community, nobody is really talking about this, and the larger gaming community is kind of treating it like, look on what's going on in the FGC, without really dealing with the fact that this has become a sort of issue as gaming has grown more influential in the world with the rise of esports and streaming. As gaming starts to appeal to people across the spectrum from all age ranges, I think it's time for the gaming community to make it a priority to protect younger players. I don't know if that comes in the form of players censoring themselves in game chats or using age restrictions on matchmaking or being able to report players for how they interact with minors, but I think it's time that the gaming community acknowledge that these guys are among us and we did more to protect women and minors from them. For people who want to write it off as a fighting game community issue, while this did happen with EVO, again, these issues have been presented in the Pokemon community, they've now come up in the Destiny community, and they'll almost certainly come up in the Fortnite community later on down the road. So even though you might think your favorite streamers' toxic jokes and behavior are funny, you have to remember that these people have influence over and access to children, and by allowing them to consistently put that energy into the community until we've ultimately found out they've done something horrible, we have been complicit in providing them with the influence that they needed to cause harm to others. When Dr. Disrespect finally loses his platform for being exactly who he pretended to be, while I consider it a win for decency, the damage has already been done. People talk about cancel culture, and I think that they miss the point of what it's intended to do. The idea is not to shame the person. The idea is to remove their influence so that they can't cause further harm with it. While it has been indeed overused in many contexts, many of these people do need to be canceled, and the community shouldn't be satisfied until criminal charges have been brought against the most egregious of them. As a gaming community, we need to come together on this one and never allow things like this to continue. We need to hold each other accountable, and we need to speak up. I don't have a bunch of subscribers or followers, but if you haven't heard this story yet or don't know why Evo is canceled, hold the media outlets and YouTubers accountable and make sure that they report on stories like this so that people cannot weaponize this gaming thing we all love to take advantage of children. Inside Gaming, report on this story. IG, do a follow-up on the story. GameStop, use your resources to give these victims a platform. Don't just publish one article. Do more. In the words of Mrs. Lovejoy, think of the children, you know? Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in. If you found this insightful in any ways, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, tap on the little bell icon so you get notifications when we post new videos. I'll be back later this week with another video, but until then, remember, if you want to get in the game, get on the sticks.